Hey there, just so we're all clear, I've already seen the third film, and I'm not going to spoil anything. That's actually why I'm talking about the first film. I'm going to review the other Sonic movie franchise media properties, comparing them to the third film, because we are going to touch on it, but still spoiler-free. But I'm also going to give you my take on these films, right, as we go through. But I think it's interesting. I mean, that was the first thing I wanted to do. Because the third film, this is not spoilers, the third film does kind of plug into a couple of little things that were mentioned, and even in the first film, really making it feel like a whole package. And so I immediately got the impulse to revisit pretty much everything. This feels a little bit like a full circle. And so I wanted a place for us to talk about that, even as this movie ages, the third film ages, right? Within the next couple of days, right after I get through all the other media properties in the Sonic movie franchise, we will get to the spoiler review, but I feel it appropriate since people might be waiting for their friends, right, to go all together. It might take some days for families and friends to coordinate to be able to see this film. And in my support of the film, because I enjoyed the third film so much, I feel like it's only right to do my part and do whatever I can, even if it's minimal, to stop the spread of any kind of spoilers. So don't you worry, I'm not going to be doing any of that. Okay, so this is where we're going to go into our comparison and my takes and all this stuff. Ready? Here we go. So, in general, like the thumbnail says, it's not even close. I love the third film way better. However, I think it's important to acknowledge the context in which this came out, right? So because I constantly, when I'm talking about the third film, and here's my thoughts on the third film here, but I'm basically saying, like, I can't even believe that this is happening, right? I do really, really want a fully animated Sonic film that is more authentically Sonic, where he doesn't need this origin story, right? However, and I've said it many times as well, these movies are not canon. However, at the Hollywood scale, I could see that that doesn't even matter for some people. At that scale, it has a lot of impact, and I understand that. And this is one of those things where, you know, everyone's going to go a different way, but I think that trying to introduce general audiences to the character Sonic, I think it was not a fair trade, but I think it was necessary to figure out a way to make Sonic more accessible, at least in a live-action setting. I think when you're in a live-action setting, the contrast between, like, actual real people actors and how cartoony even Sonic's character arc is, or otherworldly, I should say, not cartoony, otherworldly. It just makes it, something about it is, it's a little too far of a stretch, and bringing it in to that live action, it's typical in live action films to have that kind of character arc. So it makes sense that it being live action and making it more grounded. That's even the vocabulary they use, right? In interviews for the first film, they wanted to make a Sonic story that's more grounded. And you can even see it into Jim Carrey's approach to the character Robotnik and Eggman. That's better evidence of it, right? He is showing this evolution. So there was always this sensation that we're gonna get there. And that's part of why I feel like, especially looking back, this film is much more enjoyable, right? Like, before I started playing it, almost right after, like the morning after watching the movie, Lourdes told me, she's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to watch it. But she was sitting down and watching the movie more. It changes when you know where things are going to go. So there's a lot of stuff in this movie that are like, oh my God, yeah, general audiences, this is for general audience. It's not for me. But I was in a state of like, wow, because even as somebody who I literally cannot even remember, my parents can't even remember when I started engaging with this media property, okay? And not even in my childlike wonder imagination could I even imagine a movie at this scale. And when I say at this scale, it's like what I was saying just earlier, right? Hollywood scale, right? I was able to imagine a fully animated Sonic movie as a kid. Oh, of course, right? Of course. And I can imagine it looking beautiful. Probably even more beautiful than this movie. Or the second movie or the third movie. But in this way, and what this means, you can tell that I think it means a lot because I keep bringing it up in all these videos. So because of where we end up, I'm really thankful how it kind of plugged into what general audiences needed to fall in love with Sonic. There is a little bit of this friction that some people feel that are more hardcore Sonic fans that really like the purest form of the Sonic world from the games. They're a little bit worried that this new influx of fandom from the movies will come with a an emboldened ignorance because the films were successful. And I think that if the other side, right, the more purist Sonic fan side, is also emboldened and ignorant because they think they know better, it's not going to be a good situation. So I'm trying to really focus in on, while I don't love this movie, especially looking back, I do think it's just in general a movie that's full of heart. I can see efforts to introduce this very zany and crazy character, but making him as palatable as possible for general audiences. And I can't help but feel like that is what is bothering more purist Sonic fans. Because it hurts. You want validation. It's the same things that make references to the games exciting is the same reason why, for some other fans, it hurts so much to see those things not exist. So I can empathize with both sides, but I have a lot of faith in that Sonic succeeding at this scale will be a good thing. But not everyone feels that way. So that's how I'm coming at these movies. So this is definitely my least favorite of the three, but it has a really good just story in general. I don't know if it's a Sonic story, but I'm thankful for it. And I'm thankful for the redesign, and I'm thankful for the teams that put it together, right? They listened to the fans and made Sonic look more like Sonic. So it started to symbolize where they were going to end up. So it made it almost, in a weird way, more palatable for fans, hardcore fans, which is cool. Because when we first saw the ugly Sonic design, we were like, oh, it's only for general audiences. We saw none of that true love for who Sonic is and what he represents. But then a little bit of it's shown through, right? A little bit. And that was the redesign. The unprecedented redesign. But second movie, third movie, it's like, oh, okay. And through knowing all that, having the full trilogy, it really does feel genuine that they always wanted to do something like that. So I have nothing but respect. But of course, time will tell, right? Just like time is changing my view on this film, time is going to change my view on the film series. So we'll talk about that when that happens. And that's exactly why the time limit exists. There's a limit to your perception on media. It just makes sense. Anyway, so it's time for me to recap, but I think I kind of already did the recap, so I'm going to frame the question for you, right? And I already asked you guys about what you think the success of the third movie is going to have on the Sonic franchise. But what I want to ask you this time is, do you think the first film is any different because you've seen the third film now? Basically, just the same thing I kind of explored here. Do you think that you can excuse and look past certain non-Sonic-y things because they ended up doing more Sonic-y things? Is that something that's worth looking past? Am I lowering my standards? Am I being too optimistic about the future? I don't know. I'm interested to hear why you think that might be. And so I can make a follow-up, and maybe I'll be more enlightened for it. I only seek to help. And if I think my take is not helpful, then I'll stop holding it. I'm only interested in having takes that are helpful. And right now, I think the thing I talked about before, right? I can see these two very passionate waves of fandoms inevitably going to crash together. And it can be something beautiful, or it could be something ugly. And I think the only way it's going to be beautiful is if both, at the majority, is if both meet in the middle and do a dance. But it's going to require compromise on both sides. It's going to require movie fans to acknowledge things that are not Sonic-y. Not to try to fight for what Sonic represents or means because it's Hollywood. Like, that's goofy. Don't be goofy, right? Remember the original intentions. That's art. Art is art. art will always be intention first. Sonic, it's a little blurry to figure out what that is about, but we'll talk about that in another video, I am sure. All right. You people who didn't like the 5 minutes, I'm sure you're just loving the fact that I have these outros. I'll probably have to tighten them up a little bit, but that's it for me. Peace.